Chairman, Organizing Committee, Mr. Cyril, Director of Program, speakers, delegates, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all put on record the apologies and regrets of the Deputy Governor, Economic Policy, Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Muhammed Sani Abdullahi, who actually planned and worked very hard to make it to this event in person. But as you are mostly aware, only on Tuesday, that's the day before yesterday, we concluded the Monetary Policy Committee meetings. And arising from that meeting were a number of issues that required his attention. And because of those, he is not able to be here in person and has asked me to represent him. So I will be presenting the keynote address of the Deputy Governor, Economic Policy, Mr. Abdullahi Muhammed Sani, whom I am representing. I see quite a number of delegates from the Central Bank of Nigeria here, including some directors of the bank. I'd like to welcome you and extend the warm regards of the Deputy Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Abdullahi. So, good morning, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and fellow advocates of Africa's economic transformation. I am deeply honored to deliver the keynote address at the 2025 Regtech Africa Conference and Awards ceremonies. Over the next 2 days, this distinguished assembly of policymakers, industry leaders, regulators, investors, and innovators have been brought together to explore how technology, innovation, and collaboration can work together to unlock Africa's developmental potentials. Now, the theme of this conference, Unlocking Africa's Cross-Border Payments, Trade, and Investment Opportunities Through Public-Private Partnerships, resonates deeply with my vision. And I'm aware a good number of you may have seen the book authored by the Deputy Governor himself that speaks elaborately and quite deeply to the issue of governance and how to do things differently to improve the lots of the citizens of Africa. Now, so this is a subject that he is very passionate about and is so very deeply reflected in his keynote address, which I'm presenting. An Africa where policymakers work with the private sector to enrich the lives of its citizens through data-driven, transparent, and collaborative approaches to development. It is my firm belief that this conference provides that opportunity for the much-needed continued engagements, partnerships, and policy alignments necessary for fostering economic integration and unlocking significant value across the African continent. Lagos, a city renowned for its commercial dynamism and a vibrant ecosystem of technology, innovation, and expertise, provides the ideal setting for these crucial discussions. Now, the African challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, if we must unlock the vast potentials that Africa holds, we cannot continue to do business as usual. This calls for a disruption. Incremental change is simply not sufficient. What we need is a reimagining of governance. a realignment of fiscal, monetary, and trade strategies to serve as a bridge between the rich and the poor. And as a matter of fact, that's the central thesis of the book in question. I commend it to those of us who are developmentally minded to read this book, and you will then be able to appreciate more the person and the thoughts of the Deputy Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Abdullahi Sani Mohammed. We must leverage public-private partnerships to foster economic and financial inclusion, create investment opportunities, strengthen cross-border trade, and advance financial ecosystems. We need a paradigm shift, a disruptive approach, and this is very emphatic, a disruptive approach to build cross-border payment systems, establish trade frameworks, and unlock investment opportunities that truly benefit and works for everybody. Africa is home to the fastest growing population, accounting for about 18.56% of the world's population, and estimated at 1.5 billion people, with a median age of 19 years, which when you compare to the rest of the world, you can then begin to appreciate where he is coming from. I know Europe is about 40, 41, right? Southeast Asia is also around the same age. So if you look at clusters around the world, Africa parades one of the youngest populations in this planet Earth. It is estimated that by 2023, half the people entering the global workforce will be from Africa. And by 2075, a third of the planet will be Africans. I think this is something to ponder on, to reflect on for a few seconds. Despite having nearly 20% of the world's population, Africa's share of global GDP is less than 3%. As of 2024, Africa's combined GDP was around USD 2.8 trillion, less than the GDP of Germany. And that's the stark reality that we face. With the top 5 economies, that's South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, and Ethiopia, accounting for nearly a half of the GDP of Africa. So you begin to wonder what happens to the rest. And you know the number of countries that we have in Africa. 32 of the 44 countries identified by the United Nations as being least developed, 32 of them are on the continent of Africa. With the level of poverty higher in sub-Saharan Africa than anywhere else. Several reasons can be adduced for Africa's precarious position. This includes its over-reliance on commodities, making Africa susceptible to commodity price changes, and serving as suppliers of raw materials. And I like to add at this point that, yes, this has always been a challenge, that we have economies that are primary producers and are heavily dependent on, what comes in from this primary produce. But there is an addition to these dynamics, which is conflict. And I'm sure you're aware of what is happening over the years, as long as I have been studying in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now it is Nigeria's reality to some extent. The crisis, the banditry, all the criminalities in certain parts of Nigeria, Zamfara, parts of Kaduna, have been largely attributed to, the mineral resources of those communities and those locations. So there is another important dimension to this dilemma, which is the factor of conflict. Another major issue is the lack of connectivity between African economies. It has been estimated that only 13 to 16% of trade in Africa is intra-African. That is quite dismal. I wish I had the statistics for other continents. I would gladly put them out here. And you will realize that if you go to the Americas, for example, you will find that trade on that continent, intra-trade on that continent is in excess. It's actually in excess of 40%. In Europe, we are somewhere around 30-something, thereabout. But in Africa, we are looking at only between 13 to 16%. While progress has been made in reducing tariffs, trade between African countries has been hindered by the lack of cross-border trade infrastructures. In terms of cross-border payments, trade and investment, Africa continues to face significant challenges necessitating strategic engagements to fully realize Africa's cross-border payments, trade, and investment potentials through public-private partnerships. Some of these challenges are highlighted below. Number one, high transaction costs. Despite advancements, Sub-Saharan Africa remains one of the most expensive regions for cross-border payments, with an average cost of around 7.73%, significantly higher than the global average of about 6%. Regulatory fragmentation. The regulatory landscape across African nations is highly fragmented, complicating efforts to seamless cross-border payment services. Every country has its own rules regarding foreign exchange, money laundering, and related regulations. Number three, geopolitics. The changing global geopolitical landscape, which has grown towards protectionism, entails that African countries begin to create solutions focused on intra-African economic integration, driven by the harmony between proactive and positive public policy and private sector innovation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these challenges demand very bold, innovative, inclusive, and courageous solutions. I will now turn my focus to the immense opportunities that lie ahead and the potential solutions that could unlock them. Opportunities for Africa's transformation. Distinguished guests, public-private partnerships have emerged as a powerful tool for addressing complex economic challenges. By combining the strengths of both the public and the private sectors, as well as technology innovators, PPPs can bridge gaps in infrastructure, governance, and service delivery. In the context of cross-border payments and trade, PPPs offer a unique opportunity to harmonize regulatory frameworks, modernize payment systems, and create seamless pathways for investment. However, for it to truly deliver on its promise, we must rethink governance by prioritizing inclusion, transparency, and accountability. Regulators and policymakers can more effectively support the private sector through collaborations to enhance cross-border payments, modernizing KYC requirements, digital payment solutions and open banking regulations, and streamlining regulation across jurisdictions to accelerate the pace of innovation. 2, leveraging technology for sustainable financial ecosystem. Technology is the great enabler of our time. From blockchain to artificial intelligence, technological solutions are transforming the way we conduct business, manage risks, and deliver services. These innovations are particularly relevant for Africa, where traditional financial infrastructure is often lacking. The African cross-border payments market is projected to experience significant growth, fueled by the continent's accelerating digital transformation. Key drivers include increasing internet penetration, the proliferation of remittance and cross-border payment startups, and favorable regulatory developments. Market projections suggest a value of about 180 billion US dollars by 2030, with McKinsey anticipating a 152% increase in African e-payments between 2020 and 2025. In 2022, the AU and Afrexim made a very bold move by launching the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, to revolutionize cross-border payments and boost intra-African trade. PAPS is fully operational in the 6 countries of the West African Monetary Zone, WAMS, with daily transactions by traders, SMEs, and individuals. In Nigeria alone, the value of transactions on PAPS for Nigerian participants increased significantly to 14.72 billion from 2.8 billion in 2023. PAPS is gaining traction on the African continent as a transformative solution, with more African central banks and multinational commercial banking groups poised to join the network. In 2023, PAPS extended its reach to the Caribbean region, where all 11 central banks of the Caribbean unanimously adopted PAPS as a preferred payment and settlement system, thus solidifying PAPS as a global payment and settlement system. I think that deserves a round of applause. I therefore use this forum to call on all African countries that have not adopted PAPS to do so, as this will not only lower costs and improve efficiency, but will also boost trade on the continent. Number 3, data-driven insights, remittances, trade, and growth. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, a data-driven approach is pivotal to unlocking Africa's cross-border payments, trade, and investment opportunities. This will enhance the ability of policymakers to make informed and aligned decisions based on accurate and timely data. In terms of remittances, in 2023, remittances flow from the estimated 40 million Africans residing abroad reached approximately 100 billion US dollars globally. Mobile money. Of course, of this total, Sub-Saharan Africa received an estimated 56 billion. This is citing World Bank data 2024. Mobile money has demonstrated a transformative impact on the African economy with substantial growth in transactions, facilitating intra-African trade, notably for SMEs, and generating significant economic returns. The Global System for Mobile Communication Association, GSMA, data revealed a US $600 billion contribution to the GDP of countries offering mobile money services over the decade ending in 2022. In 2023, intra-African trade experienced a growth of 7.2%, attaining a value of approximately $192 billion US dollars. This expansion is indicative of the rising contribution of intra-regional trade to Africa's overall trade, which increased to 15% in 2023 from 13.6% in 2022. Again, this references Afrexim data 2024. Drivers of growth. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the implementation of open banking standards and APIs is fostering interoperability among banks and technology providers. This framework, strategically designed to catalyze competition and innovation within the banking sector, leverages advanced technological infrastructure and evolving business paradigms. The African Continent Free Trade Area, and China's Belt and Road initiatives are instrumental in fostering the growth of African cross-border trade. The development of integrated cross-border payment systems, exemplified by the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, represents a critical step towards unlocking the continent's full trade and investment through streamlined policy and efficient settlement mechanisms. Digital assets, notably stablecoins, are increasingly recognized as significant channels for cross-border payments within the African continent. According to Shane analysis, stablecoins comprise approximately 43.0% of Africa's total transaction volume and 23% of total transaction value, estimated at US $59.3 billion. Stablecoins are providing individuals and businesses with a reliable mechanism for store of value, international payment facilitation, and cross-border trade support. This challenges traditional cross-border payment paradigms and offers advantages in speed, efficiency, cost-effectiveness, transparency, as well as security. The development presents both opportunities for innovators and entrepreneurs and regulators, as well as policymakers generally, in underscoring the necessity for public-private collaboration to strategically leverage emerging innovation in a structured and welfare-enhancing manner. Call to action. As we look to the future, the task before us is very clear: to build a more inclusive and prosperous Africa, where cross-border payments, trade, and investment are not just a privilege of a few, but the right of all of our citizens. This will require bold leadership, no doubt. innovative thinking, and a commitment to collaboration. To the governments and representatives of governments that are here today, I urge you to create an enabling environment for private sector investment. You've been doing that. You need to do more, while also ensuring that the benefits of growth are equitably shared. And to the private sector, I challenge you to innovate with purpose, developing solutions that address the needs of the poor and marginalized. And to all of us, I call for a renewed commitment to partnership, recognizing that only by working together can we unlock Africa's immense potentials. Conclusion. In closing, let us remember that the true measure of our success will not be in the sophistication of our technologies